bread is a central part of the diet of millions of people around the world. When and where was bread born?
Bread is born every day, and artisanal bread is in essence the birth of life every day. And I find bread so fascinating precisely because we are dealing with a living thing.
But let's go back to the very beginning.
We think that bread probably emerged in early Egyptian civilization, probably as a result of an accidental fermentation. Fermentation, of course, is the core of the process of bread making. This goes back a long way, and bread did not become critically important until we had a sedentarized civilization which engaged in farming, which probably began around the Mesopotamian area, and certainly goes back a couple of thousand years.
Even during those ancient times, bread was much more than just food.
It's charged with historical signification, moral signification. I think that there are many unconscious ways in which bread is the bearer or carrier of social, cultural, liturgical messages. So if we are Christians, bread is the body of Christ. If we are Jews, it has a sacral aspect when we bring in the Sabbath.
It was in France, where, over centuries, bakers refined bread into its most elegant forms.
So bread was celebrated as having achieved in France its acme, its zenith of excellence. The French had a great variety of bread very early on, and they understood bread to be not simply an object of necessity, the cords of necessity that bind us. That's for the majority of people who are poor, who live precariously, who live uneasily. But it was also for the elites, the cords of the imagination, an object of pleasure.
In fact, bread was so important in France that in 1789, a shortage and spike in bread prices led to a series of riots that sparked the French Revolution. In the face of the riots, Marie Antoinette famously declared, "Let them eat cake." She was referring to brioche, one of the most refined kind of bread that was made of egg and only accessible to nobility.
But for 350, 400 years, French enjoyed culinary hegemony, which is part of the symbolic power of the French. We call that today soft power, and this soft power helped to make of France the country of all food, including bread. So it became known as the country of bread, and so the stereotype of France is the baguette, the beret, and the pinard, the bottle of wine.
Bread making faced the challenges of a modernizing world. At the beginning of the 20th century, yeast replaced leaven because it facilitated a faster fermentation process.
There are 4 basic elements in bread. It's flour, water, a leavener, and salt. That's real bread without adding fat or eggs or dairy or anything like that.
Leaven you have to refresh 4 times every 24 hours. So the baker could never go to sleep. He was constantly waking up, refreshing, that is to say, putting in more water, putting in more flour, allowing the fermentation to deepen, to prepare the leaven for the bread-making process. And now that with yeast, you could bake bread much more quickly and much more easily. He could start at 4 o'clock in the morning, and there were social laws that were coming into being as well to prevent the bakers from being exploited this way. Karl Marx called the bakers white miners, by which he meant, in reference to miners who go underground, coal miners in particular, who are covered in black.
By 1920, the United States started making bread on an industrial scale. Handmade bread became a thing of the past as large-scale production took over. The meaning of bread and its taste began to change.
In America, this was associated with modernity and with values that Americans believed would be dominant values. And that had nothing to do with taste, nothing to do with aesthetics.
It was like white bread, very, very white and squishy in a paper bag on the bottom shelf in the grocery store.
It has a chemical aroma that's very strong, so it's been additivized and corrected, as it were. It also has a yeasty aroma to it, so it's not very attractive. But I was brought up on packaged bread.
They last for a month, which is shocking because my bread lasts 1 or 2 days.
It rather was, how can we produce a mass food as economically as possible and put it out in the market rapidly? It was tasteless.
In the United States, after the rise of industrial bread, artisanal loaves became more and more associated with home kitchens. From these private spaces, countless personal stories of bread were born.
So for me, bread is something that I started baking with my mother at a very early age. So if you ask my mother, she actually takes a lot of credit for the idea of Hot Bread Kitchen.
When I was little, my grandmothers both liked to bake, and they made American white bread, but they would knead it in a big bowl, and it would be that smell of fresh yeasted bread.
We're Jewish, and there wasn't a place anywhere around to get a challah, or the bread that you need on Friday for Shabbat. And so my mother would bake challah, and I when I was probably 2 or 3 years old, I remember kneading the bread and the smell of the bread, and those memories are very visceral for me. I think why Hot Bread Kitchen has been successful is because everybody has a story or a relationship with bread, and that's an international cross-cultural experience.
Despite the advance of industrially produced bread throughout the world, especially in the United States, you can still find traditional baguettes in French boulangeries.
It didn't have any real existence for me until I went to France. And it was like a bolt of lightning. You know, when I first tasted the French bread, it was something I was not prepared for.
So the first trip I went on to Europe was in France, so there was a boulangerie right near where we were staying. So I went there every day and got a baguette, and it was amazing to try a real French baguette compared to what we had in the United States at that time.
It was like the first time I held a woman in my arms.
So I became a bread baker because I went to France and I learned a little bit about bread baking there. And then I came back and taught myself by trial and error, making lots of recipes and working through some cookbooks.
What are Amy Sherber's artisanal breads in New York like?
It's really natural, really fresh. You need to eat it now, enjoy it, freeze it, toast it, something like that, but you don't put any kind of additives in to give it that extended life.
What do they offer?
So naturally done, natural fermentation that we use without any kind of additives is much healthier because your body digests it. It's not taking in any chemicals. It's just the way bread has always been made over all those years when you create a sourdough starter or a little bit of some other starter, not too much yeast, and very natural fermentation.
Bread, a journey from homemade craft to gluten-free. Let's continue to explore the artisanal bread everyday revolution. A few years ago, the United States began to see the slow rebirth of artisanal bread. Chelsea Market, one of the well-known gourmet markets in New York, is a great place to see the latest trends in artisanal bread. This is Amy's Bread, the bakery of Amy Sherber. Amy Sherber is one of the leading personalities in the American bread revolution and a founding board member of the Bread Bakers Guild of America.
Our signature bread is semolina with golden raisins and fennel, which is what people come in for very often because they want, something unique, and that's really a satisfying flavor profile with the cornmeal and the durum wheat, golden raisins that are very plump, and then the ground fennel inside the bread.
Her bread sparked a growing interest in semolina breads, or pane siciliano, which is a good example of how the bread revolution has spread. But it is just one of many varieties of bread that the bakery offers.
I started my bakery on 9th Avenue in my neighborhood, and I wanted to open a small bakery where I could make bread for the neighbors. It was going to be manageable. I had 5 employees when I started, and I had about 650 square feet. And that was my vision at the time, start a small neighborhood bakery.
As the fame of her bread spread, Amy's Bread expanded by moving the bread kitchen to Long Island City, but without losing its artisanal heart.
You know, there's a real joy in running a bakery because it's such a collaborative effort. And so I have my employees, and many of them have worked with me for almost 20 years, 15 years, 10, 12. And when I come into work and I see all of them, and they use all their knowledge and their skills, and they work with their hands to make this beautiful bread, the effort, the labor of love, the pride, all of that comes through in the product. And I think that that's just such an enjoyable thing.
Cuando yo llegué solamente había un espacio de unos 5, muy pequeño, una sola cafetera, una vitrinita, una computadora, una máquina de recibir las órdenes de todo muy a la época.
And now I have a little over 200 employees, including the delivery drivers and the cleaning staff, the bakers, and the retail employees. And it's a big responsibility.
Los movimientos que hemos tenido, desde donde empezamos, la segunda, luego la tercera panadería, siempre eso da mucha satisfacción.
Pumpernickel with sunflower seeds. No, this is more on the sour side, on the sour side.
It has honey, molasses, and caramel.
We have something in our bread, like a sourdough starter that we maintain, and we always refresh it. We keep a little piece of the old sourdough starter and we refresh it with fresh flour and water every day.
Luego empezamos un proceso de moldeo a mano y luego miramos de que la masa esté formándose como un glue, como un ácido, un sabor, y ahí ya entramos en un proceso de cocinar, el cual le hacemos varios cortes para que el pan tenga una forma de respirar y se quede un croste como una piel, y usamos unos hornos a base de una piedra y todo funciona así por ese medio. Bueno, este es un pan que hacemos a base de olivos y lo llamamos picciolini olive. Y pues esto es muy sabroso, lo usan mucho los restaurantes. El proceso que nosotros le damos es un proceso de fermentación. Por eso cuando ustedes sienten como la piel, pero por dentro es suave. Es suave y o sea que se conserva en el mismo tamaño, por lo que le digo que primero el horno le da la piel y ya después lo que llamamos un proceso natural. Tenemos un pan que lo utilizan en los restaurantes. Este pan lo cortan en la mitad y le colocan lo que es la mortadela, las cosas, y lo hacen una especie de ciabatta, sándwich, lo que tú le quieras colocar a él. Tiene el mismo proceso, un poco más suave. Yo me trato de controlar, pero a veces no puedo.
You can see it's very sticky. Well, after we take it out and then it rises, then we put it in the walk-in so it can get a little colder and grab more strength. By the time it's ready to shape, it will be a lot more firm than it is right now. So it will be a lot more easy to manage. Yeah. And once you add the currants, they suck up a lot of the water, so it gets a lot more easy to shape. I actually do all of them. I mix from the French dough to the brioche to the whole wheat 5-grain, olive bread, rye, potato. I would say our signature bread is one of the ones I like the most, is the semolina, golden raisin, and fennel. And it's really good.
It's hard for me to guess how much bread we make, but we make about 3,000 pounds of the sourdough breads, and then probably about 5,000 pounds of French baguettes and organic breads every single day. But they're all shaped into lots of small things, long loaves, like little breadsticks and rolls. So it's not exactly like 1-pound loaves. It's thousands and thousands of pieces of breads every day. And in the bread kitchen, it takes a lot of hands to make all that because everything is done by hand.
Amy sells a variety of bread wholesale to restaurants, in addition to her own stores.
I just like the artisanal feel of this place. I think it's very authentic. And yeah, I never gravitated towards just eating bread as like a savory product just to eat it, but they're all so pretty here, so it's nice to kind of eat them.
The food is really, I think, fresh, and it reminds me of my mom's own food. So I can come here and I know I can get really fresh, homemade food. I feel at home when I'm here.
I wish I had a grandmother that baked like this.
Well, when we talk to our customers, they always tell us how much they like the flavor of the bread, they like the crust. Our ovens allow the bread to get a great crusty exterior. They like the variety. We're known for big selection, and there are other bakeries in New York that have maybe 3 or 4 types of bread, but we have probably, well, we make 25 different kinds of bread, the doughs every day, and then they're made into many shapes and sizes. So people love all the variety, the uniqueness.
Yeah, I eat the bread sometimes. I'll get a loaf and bring it home. Yeah, I'm a picky eater, and I can definitely taste. I'm even picky with the taste of water and with like sugars and pastries. If it tastes very artificial, I can't eat it. So I appreciate like a good pastry, and I don't mind the calories if it's really good and it's rich and it's like a more natural dessert.
I think their coconut bars are amazing, but also they're like twirls. They're like they're twists. They're like chocolate or like Parmesan, depending on if you want to go savory or sweet. They're amazing.
It's sort of like a candy store full of amazing choices of bread, and there are portions that are small, like our twists, so you can have a snack. There are dinner rolls. There are big loaves and small loaves, so we can suit almost any taste and any kind of need. And so I think people really appreciate the versatility, all the variety, and the quality. When they come to us, they're looking for taste and quality.
In recent years, a new breed of consumers has been looking for healthier, organic, or whole wheat bread. Amy's Bread accompanied that change.
Este es el sector para todo, pero en este momento salió la producción de orgánica.
We also have an organic flour that I like a lot, which is it's from Central Milling. It's grown in Utah, but it has a very nice, we also use a lot of flour from Vermont, and we're very happy with that. It's very consistent, it's very good quality, it's very pure. So we choose coarsely ground flours. I have a rye flour from New York as well, that's from Lake Champlain area. Over the years, more people have wanted the whole wheat, finally. So after I had those 4 kinds of whole wheat bread, they are still on our menu, and now we make many more loaves than we really started out with. So I'm very happy to see the whole wheat, and the interest in whole wheat and health has grown in New York.
In its most extreme form, the search for organic lifestyles created a trend that at times has demonized the consumption of flour. Is bread healthy? That question has led to a lot of discussion and controversy.
Well, people are a bit afraid of eating bread today. They want to be gluten-free because they hear all these stories about how it helps their body feel better. They don't have inflammation, they don't have this and that and the other thing.
Well, gluten is the protein that's found in wheat, oat, barley, and rye.
Every time the tennisman Djokovic wins a tennis tournament, Djokovic says, it's because I avoid eating gluten. And when he says, I avoid eating gluten, thousands of bakers around the world become enraged and become distressed.
I'm very pro-gluten. I'll tell you about this gluten-free trend. I don't believe it. I feel like it's a mischanneling of the problem. I don't think that gluten is inherently bad for anybody. I do think that breads that are loaded with commercial yeast, that are proofed really quickly, that don't give the natural fermentation process a chance to take hold, flour that's bleached and bromated affects the bread in a negative way that makes it hard to digest.
On its own, if you don't have celiac or you're not gluten intolerant, is it bad for you? I don't know. There's a lot of information out there that says it is. But for some people, it seems to be fine. It is a choice that we see a lot, that people come in just choosing to eat gluten-free because they think it's better, they think they can lose weight, or they just simply feel better without it. So we're always happy to talk to people about that and to support their decision.
From my point of view, what's unhealthy about bread is not what's in the bread, it's what you put on the bread.
but whether it is or not, I don't know.
So if you put on this much butter, and then you put on this much cheese, and then this much ham, yeah, you're going to have too much fat, and you're going to clog your arteries.
El pan es grandísimo para la salud.
Carbohydrates make us smart, they give us energy. It is kind of the easiest way to consume the calories that we need to keep the day going. And that is why it's kind of globally such an important portion of the food that people are eating.
The short answer is that except for people who have celiac disease, except for people who have specific gastroenterological problems, I believe, having studied bread for 45 years and studied it from every point of view, including a nutritional and medical point of view, I believe that bread is quite healthy.
What about people who can't eat bread? For example, people with celiac disease or other gastroenterological problems. And can artisanal bread unite people and promote social change? These coming trends on Revolution, bread